Welcome back to Live and Spooky. I hope you're all having a fabulous spooky season and have been enjoying the October special episodes. By now, some of you may have even picked up a copy of This Way Lies Madness or Fever Dreams, the brand new horror anthologies that we've spotlighted so far on the podcast this month. You may have even used the listener discount codes that we've been offering in the Thursday bonus episodes. If you haven't been listening along or you aren't up to date, I would really recommend that you listen to the other Live and Spooky episodes after this one. The stories truly are great, and I'm not just saying that. It's really lovely to hear them alongside insights from the authors and editors. But if you haven't been listening along and this is your first Live and Spooky experience, here's the rundown. This month we're spotlighting our newest horror fiction titles in a big way. 2 brand new short stories, an episode on a Tuesday, 2 episodes a week, insights from our authors and editors, and discount codes exclusively for our listeners. Yes, we're really into Halloween and horror here at Flame Tree. Now, today's book star is Latin American shared stories. And I know what you're thinking. That doesn't sound like a horror anthology. And you're right, it's not strictly horror. It's a vibrant collection of speculative stories and fascinating essays, highlighting the many voices, mythologies, folklore, and storytelling prowess of authors from Latin American countries, all writing in the traditions of the Latin American diaspora. But our die-hard horror fans shouldn't panic. We've sifted through the collection and found the spookiest stories for you all. This is, after all, October, and if not now, when? I'll pass you on now to V. Castro, the editor of Latin American Shared Stories, so she can introduce the anthology.
V. Castro here, Mexican-American writer from Texas, but I'm an author of 2 Flame Tree Press books, The Queen of the Cicadas and Mestiza Blood. And it's actually Mestiza Blood that really kind of pushed my interest in editing an anthology of short stories from across different cultures, countries, languages, and experiences. Mestiza Blood's full of folklore and different tales, and you'll see that in Latin American short stories. This book is filled with stories that will devastate you, that will freak you out, that are a little sultry, but more importantly, they will give you voices that you might not have discovered otherwise. And that was really special when reading through the stories that came through, but also reading the stories of the invited authors. You are part of a writer's journey when you pick up this book. You're part of them expanding their readership, and hopefully you'll get interested in the other things that they have created. Most important thing about this book, I feel, is that it also shows that Latin American culture is not a monolith. We are all different in so many ways, but that doesn't make any culture less rich than the other. And so you'll get that from this book. And I hope that you will share it, rate it, review it, maybe pick up some other works by the writers. For me, that's a really fun part of being an editor, is I know some of the writers really well and I trust, what they'll produce, but also giving a new writer a chance, giving them a platform, or publishing for them for the first time. It's a really big deal. I've been there. And, if you're a writer, you know that. It is something, to celebrate, to be chosen to be in an anthology. And so, again, this book celebrates new writers, established writers, all sorts of different cultures, genders. You're going to get it all. And I am so pleased that Flame Tree Press is producing this amazingly beautiful book. It's a collector's item. Just look at it. And it will make your bookshelf a little prettier, but also a hell of a lot more interesting. So pick it up. It's out in October.
We're now going to hear from our first story author, Daniel Olivas.
Hello, my name is Daniel Olivas, and I'm the author of the short story Nacho, which appears in this wonderful anthology edited by V. Castro. My story is sort of a horror bromance, and it's deeply rooted in my life here in Los Angeles as a Mexican American. I think it touches on some of the key elements of my cultural background, including music and food and friendship. So sit back and enjoy a little horrifying romance. Thank you.
Nacho by Daniel A. Olivas. The truth is, Abundio Abarca de Jesus had grown accustomed to the lump on his neck. The mass sat just below his right ear, but did not cause any pain or discomfort. 3 months earlier, on the 1st of November, his birthday, Abundio had noticed a small, barely perceptible nodule when he slathered on the Barbasol shaving cream. Abundio remembered how intriguing he found this new feature, if that was the correct word for it, and eventually anticipated the slow but certain growth he perceived each morning as he commenced his daily ablutions. When he finally mentioned it to his mother during their once-weekly phone calls, Amaranta Guadalupe de Jesus exclaimed, "Mijo, you must see the doctor about it." Since his father had succumbed to lung cancer 6 years ago, Abundio knew what his mother feared. So he agreed to mention it to his doctor during an upcoming annual checkup. "I promised to show it to the doc, Mama." And his mother knew that her son's promise was as good as gold. Dr. Yesenia Reyes pressed and prodded Abundio's lump as she hummed an indistinct melody that must have sounded quite lovely in her mind's ear, but did nothing but to annoy her patient, who sat uncomfortably in a backless, rough paper robe without anything to shield his skin from the overactive air conditioning system other than his boxers and argyle socks. Finally she pulled back, looked up into Abundio's wide eyes and said, "I suspect it's not malignant, but let's do a biopsy to make certain, okay? We can do it here and now." "Now? Why wait?" Abundio and Dr. Reyes stared at each other in silence, each waiting for the other to buckle. Abundio lost that battle, as he always did with his doctor. "Good, let's get you prepped." 4 days later, Abundio received a phone message from Dr. Reyes. He had missed her call because he had taken a wonderful afternoon nap that day, and in order to get the most out of this special time of peace, he had turned off his cell phone. This is what the message said. "Good news, not cancer. It's what we call a benign lipoma. Nothing to worry about. We can remove it and you will be as good as new, save for a tiny scar. I have an opening next Thursday. Call my assistant and we'll take that baby out of you." Abundio played the message 3 times, and each time he listened to it as he grew a little sadder. He let his mother know, and she was relieved. "Maravilloso!" she exclaimed, and then she added, "Is the doctor single?" Abundio ignored that last question and directed his mother to the other news about his job, which was not as exciting, but worked as a perfect deflection. "I got a great annual performance review, Mama," he said. "Por supuesto," his mother responded. "They are lucky to have you, my son." The benign lymphoma floated in a small jar that Abundio had set on his nightstand when he came back from the doctor's office. At first, when Dr. Reyes had asked him if he would like to bring it home, Abundio had laughed, thinking this was nothing more than obtuse doctor humor. But Dr. Reyes did not smile and waited for a response to her question. So Abundio said, "Sure." Abundio did not like the clinical, somewhat impersonal term of benign lipoma, so he renamed the mass of tissue something a bit more friendly. Nacho. Each night, Before Abundio turned off his nightstand lamp, he would tap the top of the jar 3 times and say, "Good night, Nacho." Sometimes Abundio would add, "Sleep tight, and may you have pleasant dreams." Not surprisingly, Abundio's kind and thoughtful care of Nacho did not escape Nacho's notice. Over the course of a week, Nacho's once pinkish pallor ignited into a vibrant burgundy. Nacho's fleshy mass responded as well, growing just a bit each night while they both slept. One morning, Abundio realized that Nacho was bulging within the tight confines of the little jar. So Abundio retrieved from the attic an old fishbowl that had once served as a lovely home to 3 guppies he had named Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. But all 3 were now long deceased and buried at sea with the flush of a low-flow toilet. The fishbowl now had a new purpose. Nacho seemed quite content in his new abode and continued to flourish. Eventually, Nacho outgrew the fishbowl in a somewhat remarkable and astonishing manner. This is what happened one Sunday night. Abundio plumped up his pillow, turned to the fishbowl, tapped it 3 times, and said, "Good night, Nacho. Sleep tight, and may you have pleasant dreams." Abundio then turned off the lamp on his nightstand, snuggled into his plump pillow, and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, as he slowly awoke, he sensed someone standing over him. Abundio opened his eyes, and above him was Nacho, no shorter than 5 feet, 8 inches, leaning down to examine Abundio. But since Nacho had no eyes, Abundio was not certain what Nacho perceived. "Good morning," said Abundio. Nacho pulled back and stood erect. "Good morning," said Nacho. At the sound of Nacho's greeting, Abundio thought, "Nacho's voice is much deeper than I would have expected." And then he wondered, how does Nacho speak without a mouth? Many other questions came into his mind, but Abundio decided that they could be saved for later. "Would you like some breakfast?" asked Abundio. "Oh, that would be delightful," said Nacho. Abundio put on a robe and trundled into the kitchen, with Nacho following close behind. He prepared a large pot of coffee and chilaquillas as Nacho sat patiently at the kitchen table. The 2 new roommates ate their delicious breakfast in contented silence. Nacho eventually drank the last bit of coffee that had cooled at the bottom of his cup. "Would you like more?" asked Abundio. "Oh, yes," said Nacho. "You make the best coffee." This warmed Abundio because no one had ever complimented his coffee before. He poured another cup for Nacho. "Mil gracias," said Abundio. "I am glad you like it." "Por nada," said Nacho. "And these chilaquillas are to die for." Abundio grinned. They eventually set up a simple but workable living arrangement. Nacho slept on the living room's fold-out couch, and Abundio kept his bedroom to himself. Abundio cooked their meals while Nacho eventually got the hang of cleaning house, which he did when Abundio was away at work during the day. On weekends, they stayed in, watching movies on the flat screen, reading magazines and books, playing board games. At first, Abundio missed Nacho's nightstand presence, but over time, they fell into a placid and fulfilling routine. Abundio eventually told his mother about Nacho. When he'd given her as many details as he could think of, she remained silent. "Mama, are you still there?" "Sí, mijo." "Well?" "Mijo, I have never heard of such a thing before," his mother ventured. "But you live in a big city, and I know many strange things happen in such big places." "Strange?" "Mijo, isn't it strange?" she pressed her son. "Mama, what is strange for one person might be very normal for someone else." "Pues, mijo, most people make friends at school or the office or even mass," she said slowly, sensing that perhaps she was pushing her only son a bit too far. "But this is different, Mama." "Sí, diferente, mijo." "I don't have time to make friends, so I feel lucky I have Nacho." "Pero, mijo, it's not normal." "And what is normal?" said Abundio, attempting to control his temper and the conversation. "Pues, normal is what you see on TV." Your telenovelas are normal, Mama, said Abundio with a snicker. Ay, mijo, never mind, she said, surrendering. It is your life, and I am sorry. Sorry for what, Mama? I am sorry your father and I could never give you a brother or sister. Mama, don't. We tried, but it was not in God's plan. And with that, mother and son said their goodbyes and ended the conversation. Eventually, during their weekly phone calls, she would ask Abundio about Nacho, and he inevitably would tell some funny story about what Nacho had done or said. His mother could not help but chuckle at these stories, and in the end, she was happy her son had a new friend, and she never again questioned Abundio about it. Then one day, everything changed. On a Wednesday, Abundio came home from work and could not find Nacho. He searched each room of the house. He even spied into the attic with a flashlight. But Nacho was not to be found. Abundio started to panic. Should he call the police and report a missing what? No, the police must not get involved. So Abundio heated some leftovers, quickly ate his dinner, skipped dessert, and then made a large pot of coffee to keep him fortified as he waited at the kitchen table for Nacho to return from who knows where. After 3 hours of waiting and 4.5 cups of coffee, Abundio heard the front door open, then shut. Abundio decided to play it cool and wait for Nacho to come into the kitchen. After a few moments of silence, Nacho slowly sauntered into the room, deliberately retrieved a cup from the cabinet, and poured the last of the coffee. He took a sip, let out an almost imperceptible burp, and sat down across from Abundio. So, said Abundio, unable to stop himself from inquiring, where were you? Silence. Then Nacho said, I went to Lake Balboa. In Encino? Yes. It must be 20 miles away from here. Silence. Then in almost a whisper, Nacho said, Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? How beautiful it all is. How beautiful what all is? Nacho leaned forward. All of it. Abundio was at a loss. He had no idea where this conversation was headed. Nacho answered. The strong tree branches that seemed to be reaching for the clouds, the rippling lake water with all types of ducks and geese paddling wildly, the people, children, adults, grandparents of all shapes and sizes and colors, speaking a multitude of languages, and the music coming from small portable speakers. I heard Vicente Fernandez's buttery baritone for the first time. Ah, yes, my mother called him Chente. She loves his music. Which song was playing? Tu camino y el mío. My mother's favorite, said Abundio. It's such a sad song. Yes, it made me cry, said Nacho. Such heartbreak. Yes, such heartbreak. They sat in silence, wrestling with their own thoughts. Finally, Nacho said, Why do you think the man doesn't open the letter? The letter? You know, in the song, said Nacho, leaning towards Abundio. The man finds a letter written by his love, but he doesn't open it. He just drinks wine and somehow he knows he's lost her. But we don't really know for sure, right? Well, ventured Abundio, I guess sometimes we just know. They sat in silence, each pondering the lyrics of Fernandez's musical lament. It's so sad he passed away, Abundio finally offered. What? Said Nacho. Who passed away? Vicente Fernandez. My mother said she thought he'd live forever. So sad. Yes. After a few moments, Nacho observed, But in truth, Vicente Fernandez lives forever through his music. You are quite a philosopher. Nacho raised his coffee cup. To Vicente Fernandez. Abundo raised his coffee cup. Vicente Fernandez. Nacho added, Presente. Abundio echoed, Presente. With that, Nacho stood and said, Time for bed. Within 10 minutes, both were in their separate sleeping quarters, snoring softly in unison. The next morning, Abundio woke as the morning sun came through his window. He felt refreshed, at peace, knowing that Nacho was safe at home. He got out of bed and went to his bathroom. As Abundio slathered on Barbasol shaving cream, he gently fingered the raised scar on his neck just below his right ear. Abundio smiled. After shaving and showering, he walked through the living room and saw that Nacho had already closed the fold-out couch and neatened up. Then the wonderful aromas of coffee and chilaquiles wafted into Abundio's nostrils. This was new. Nacho never made breakfast or any other meal before. Abundio sauntered into the kitchen to welcome the new day. Abundio beheld a perfectly set kitchen table, a full coffee pot, a skillet brimming with steaming chilaquiles set carefully on a trivet, cloth napkins, and a small vase with a single pink rose in the middle. But something was very wrong. Nacho was nowhere to be seen. And Abundio suddenly noticed that there was only one place setting. Abundio broke into a cold sweat. He scanned the modest kitchen for clues. Then he saw it, a small white piece of paper, folded neatly, leaning against the gleaming toaster. On the paper was the name Abundio, written in lovely cursive writing. Abundio crept up to the note, snatched it, and held the paper, wondering what he should do. He held it for 7 seconds before deciding that he should open it. And as he read and reread the note, also written in beautiful cursive hand, the reality of Abundio's new situation slowly sunk into his consciousness. He let the note fall from his fingers, and it floated gently to the tiled floor. Abundio crouched to retrieve it, but then he felt himself falling onto his knees. The note looked blurry, and Abundio realized that his eyes brimmed with hot tears. Abundio's body crumpled, and he shook and trembled. He could feel his chest heave without control, and at that moment Abundio realized that his life had changed forever.
What did you guys think? I might class that as a body horror story. Granted, I've not read or watched much body horror, but I'm assuming a walking, talking, feeling lymphoma probably has a place in that subgenre. But I was oddly touched, though. The characters had a real bond. You may have noticed that was read by our editor, V. Castro. You will hear quite a bit of her voice in this episode, as she very helpfully came into the office to help us record some material from the book in audio. We are now going to hear from our next guest author, Alyssa Alessi, about her story, Sucker.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Alessi from Boston, Massachusetts. I write middle grade through adult horror stories, all with a twist of feminine rage. My story, Sucker, follows a vampiric young woman through her night as she goes from victim to predator. Sucker is an ode to my 20s. It's an expression of my experiences growing up as a brown woman in the city. The expectations I've experienced from men, the sisterhood I found in my roommate, and the hard shell of an exterior I felt I needed to wear. It's a balance of strength and weakness. But most importantly, it's to honor the promise I made to myself. The promise of refusal. The refusal to become a victim. The refusal to become a statistic. And a story that honors the inner voice inside my head as a man walks by me when I'm alone on a dark street. The voice that says, "I wish you would." Thank you for listening.
Sucker by Alyssa Alessi. There was nothing like a summer night in the city. Music pouring from car windows with the bass bumping long after they've turned the corner. Thighs out, smoke swirling, and heels dangling between my fingers as my feet ached from hours of dancing. They turned the lights on in the club when it was time to leave. forcing all the nocturnal beings to shield their eyes, not only from the obnoxious fluorescence, but from the realization that their dance companion looked a lot hotter in the dark. Fuck, it was too late. I spent the last 5 songs rubbing my ass on this guy that had eyes set too far apart. I couldn't unfeel his dick through my cheap polyester dress. He begged, "Mommy, come home with me." Those creepy, spaced-out eyes pleading for more than just cheap feels while I was slow winding. I shook my head no and stumbled away, trying so desperately to get lost in the crowd of other drunk brunettes. "Give me your number then, come on, you can't leave me hanging like that," the voice unfortunately not trailing off like it should. Leave them hanging? I could, and I would. If they had the audacity to follow me or go as far as to reach out and grab me after I had already said no, which happened more times than I'd like, I'd have to pull out my best trick. I could vomit on the spot. My stomach was usually empty except for the 9 or so Long Island iced teas I got for free that night. I would go out without eating so my stomach would be as flat as possible, making my ass look its best. With nothing to hold the liquor down, I'd think hard of something futile like fish milkshakes, and out some of the acidic alcohol would come. I tried to aim for their shoes, careful not to get any on myself, and it would set everyone in a 6-foot radius in a frantic frenzy of, "What the fucks?" Out I'd slip into the humid Boston night to light up my menthol cigarette, and that's exactly what I did. I started my way down the sidewalk, past the lingering cops, through the laughing women clamoring into their cars, away from the loud chatter of where to head next, and more towards the quiet block of closed businesses and the train station. I stopped to lean against a light to slip my black heels back on before I stepped on glass or worse. The closer I got to the station, the more the street was littered with trash. A few empty nip bottles here, a single brown discarded sock there, and scattered McDonald's cheeseburger wrappers blowing in the sticky breeze. The stench of urine rising from the concrete as I crossed the parking lot and towards the platform. An echo of glass hitting the pavement sent my eyes scanning the secluded lot. A man was ducking behind the dumpster, about 30 feet away, shooting up, jerking off, or maybe just minding his business. My phone buzzed with text alerts. "Yo, where you at?" across the screen several times. I sucked at responding. I looked up again to see the man peeking his head out from behind the dumpster, then retreat when he realized I was looking at him like some predatorial peekaboo. I spent the first part of my night dodging men, yes, but not because I was afraid. I'd never given the satisfaction of thinking for 1 second I was afraid. It wasn't in my nature. I took a few steps closer towards the dumpster when tires rolled to a stop behind me. Vero, my best friend, roommate, wingman, therapist, partner in crime, my everything, pulled up, hanging her head out of the passenger window of a black BMW. "We going to the afties, get in," she sang. "Who's we? Who's that driving?" I asked, trying to get a look at the driver. "Oh, that's Nico. You don't know Nico? This my man's from way back. We went to middle school together," she said, stroking the back of his neck. I was going to get in regardless of who was driving. Dumpster Man would live to see another night because I had places to go, and I wasn't about to wait around for that last train anyway. I opened the door to the back seat to find 2 guys already back there, staring at me with a hungry gaze. "Hey, what's up?" I nodded in an attempt to sound friendly and not annoyed. I was always coined the bitch with an attitude, whether I tried or not. "How you doing?" a dark-skinned man said, more like a statement, licking his lips. "I can't sit in the middle. Y'all have to push over." I waved my hand at them, urging them closer in the tight space. "Yeah, the other guy with too much fake jewelry draped around his neck protested. I took a big inhale of my cigarette, resting my arm on the open car door. "Listen, I get car sick as fuck, and I just threw up like 2 minutes ago." "Oh, hell no, what the fuck?" they whined like 2 twin babies. "Yo, Nico, tell your peoples to move over, because I will throw up back there for real." After several minutes of negotiating with Dumb and Dumber, I was relaxed in the window seat behind Vero. She reached back to hold my hand as we drove off with the bass vibrating our seats. I rested my head against the door, letting the wind that almost felt cool wash over me in a sobering embrace. I was car sick. I wasn't lying. I was drunk, nauseated, and starving. A deep hunger clawed from within, sending my bones into an aching throb. When I got this hungry, everything seemed too loud and overstimulating. Even over the music, I could hear the 3 human hearts thumping a few paces faster than normal. That was the rhythm of a heart on ecstasy. My mouth began to salivate just thinking of the drug's effects, and I cut my face in my hands instinctively to hide the pain of my teeth protruding from my gums. I had to put my focus elsewhere to distract the hunger. The scent of the nameless man-child next to me was comparable to food left over in the fridge. A plate that has certainly exceeded its best-by date, but you haven't eaten for 2 days and it's all you got. Like it would do the trick, but there may be consequences tomorrow. His blood was tainted. He drank too much sugar and not enough water. He ate Jamaican beef patties and the occasional sub-shop food. His cologne was from CVS. I told myself silently over and over, he wouldn't taste good. The car slowed to a stop, and Nico the driver was rolling up a blunt, the scent of grape cigarillo conjuring the nausea that finally settled. He parked outside our destination, hoping we would all have a smoke session before heading into the party. But my ass was already out of the car. "Where is Shorty going?" one of the guys in the back asked Vero. She rolled down her window. "Allie, come back. Wait for me. We're going to smoke up real quick and we can go in together." Her pleas mattered, but not enough to keep me. "I'm good," I said, lighting another cigarette. I didn't like to smoke with random people. There was something about putting my mouth on the same thing as randos that grossed me out. Inner thoughts were written all over my face as my lip curled upward in disgust. It was enough to settle my teeth like cold water to an erection as they were sucked back up in my jaw. Nestled back into the tiny slits they stayed hidden in, I walked away, leaving Vero in the car full of losers, and heard what I often did as I turned. "Stuck up, bitch." I leaned into the roll and made sure my ass swayed just a little bit more than usual as I started down the alley. Maybe cheap cologne guy was right. My standards were sometimes unrealistic, but I had high hopes for that evening. I was headed for the mansion, and the mansion had something for everybody, especially on a Saturday night in July. The mansion, the Afties, Benny Spot, all acceptable names for the house at the end of the alley. It blended in somehow, even when it should have stuck out like a sore thumb. In a section of the city with mostly brick, low-income housing and scattered triple-deckers was this monstrosity of a single-family home. With blackout shades and soundproof walls, it was very unsuspecting. When you got to the door, you had to say, "3 for the bean," to get in. Once inside, all you had to do was choose a room. There was a poker room with black walls and a massive round table, usually well lit and full of geriatric 40-somethings. Yes, that was geriatric when you were forever 22. There was a bar that made you feel like you never left the club with excited chatter under purple lights. Once you went upstairs, you had the option to dance in any of the theme rooms that called to you. The long, dim hallway stretching on forever with green, red, and blue lights pouring from the cracks of the doors. There were no signs as stated which room was which. You just threw yourself in and got what you got. I found myself in the 80s freestyle room first, with TK's Louder Than Love blasting through the floor speakers. The slow and smooth rhythm of the song already had me swaying my hips as I walked through the small, crowded room. I pulled a joint out from my wallet and lit it while I danced with myself. There was usually an older crowd in that room, same with the 70s disco, but sometimes it's what was needed. It was a necessary transition back into dance mode, that time to connect with the music again, to feel sensual before feasting and resting. After only 4 hits of the joint, the song was over, and I was ready to move on to the next scene. My body craved a good dance, one that would leave pools of sweat down my bra and the right guy drooling. Only the dance hall room could give me that, and I opened and closed the doors until Tempted to Touch greeted me. I loved the dance hall room the most because it reminded me of the earlier days when I was too young for the clubs, back when Vero and I spent our weekends scouting for the best basement parties. The Afties was basically a giant basement party for adults, with no one to tell us to go home. A beautiful woman with long black hair and a silk maroon halter top danced with her arms up behind her, pulling her girlfriend closer in by the neck. Her veins pulsed with the beat of the song, or the strobe light tricked me into thinking that they were. It didn't matter. She looked delicious either way. A tall guy with braids down his back bent over his dance partner and humped her from behind. My teeth couldn't stay hidden any longer, and I didn't try to force them to. I leaned against the wall and danced like I was alone. My hands like a cool cloth, moving from my neck down to in between my legs. My brain ignoring the words to the song and only hearing the rhythm that drove my pelvis. Dinner would come to me if I closed my eyes and let my snake-like body siren call the meal over. "Excuse me," someone whispered in my ear. "Can I dance with you?" I didn't respond with words. I just pulled him closer to dance. He was the best-looking guy I'd seen in a long time. Lashes, darker, longer, and better than mine. Full lips, and just the right amount of dark stubble on his squared jaw. He wore black jeans, a black t-shirt, and had tattoos running down his right arm in a full sleeve. He smelled of sancocho on a rainy weekend. He had hints of cinnamon and laughter, and I knew he'd taste of pure joy. After dancing for a few minutes, I led him out of the room so I could hear his voice. I wanted to know if it was as smooth as the way he moved. "Where are you from?" I asked. He let out a low laugh and replied, "Providence. Where are you from?" "I'm from right here. I've never seen you here before. That's why I asked." He followed me downstairs to the bar where he paid for 2 Henny straight-ups. "You come here a lot?" "No," I lied. "But I've been here before. I don't party like that." "Except I do party like that, and then some." "Okay, I see," he said, nodding his head up and down, grinning at me. An orange cat sauntered across the bar, surprising him, but reminding me that someone lived there. The owner was a man in his 50s named Benny, that not only couldn't let go of the fast life, but was definitely into his own dark shit. He always offered free drugs to the younger guys and would take them to a VIP lounge that I've only heard of, never seen. What happened at the Afties stayed at the Afties, an unwritten rule that no one questioned. "You want to go back upstairs?" I asked, hoping he'd say yes. He nodded in agreement before ordering 2 more drinks. There was a room upstairs that played 90s slow jams, had about 6 velvet sofas, and was lit by only 1 red light. It was one of the sexiest places I've ever been in, other than my own bedroom. A crystal chandelier hung from the center of the ceiling where the red light glow hit perfectly. Thick black curtains were draped about, dividing the room into separate quarters. The room was hot and smelled of sex and amaretto. There were a few leopard print throw blankets tossed around on the sofas in case people were feeling modest. The people who found themselves in that room were usually free spirits without a care as to who sees something as dull as skin. If you were there, you were completely overcome by lust, with no time to worry about others and what they thought. I loved this room, and knew it well. My favorite sofa was in the back right-hand corner. "What's your name?" I asked the gorgeous creature as we sat down. "Angel," he whispered with his lips brushing my ear. "What's yours?" I drank the rest of the Hennessy in my cup before whispering back, "It's A. Just A." He almost gave me the look of, "No, what's your real name?" But I didn't give him the chance. Over the sound of others letting out light moans, I grabbed his neck with my black acrylics and kissed him hard. He slipped his hand up my dress, sending my teeth all the way out of their slits. I moved my mouth away from his, careful not to startle him with sudden sharp fangs. I kissed his neck gently until I reached his collarbone, his scent sending me to straddle him. His trap muscle was calling my name, almost dizzying me. The way my insides screamed in agony, I knew I couldn't bear to wait another minute. My teeth pressed into his skin as my body rocked back and forth on his hand. He kissed my neck as I sucked from his trap muscle. His warm blood was just as pure as I imagined, and I tried my best to drink slow and enjoy every second, careful not to drain him. I sucked slow and steady, just enough for him to feel like it was sexual. The liquid was fire, warming what little soul I had left. I could no longer hear the music or the sighs of pleasure. I was deeply fixated on my feeding. Vero appeared in the red room, knowing exactly where to find me. Her hand pulled my hair back out of my face, like your best friend holding your hair back as you threw up after a long night. With her teeth already out, she began to suck on the other side of Angel, his other hand finding its way up her dress. His hands began to slow and weaken, and that's when we knew we had to stop. I wanted to save him, to have another time, but I couldn't stop drinking. Vero, belly full from others she had had that night, had to pull me off. Damn, bitch, that's too much. He's cute as fuck. Don't kill this one. He'll come back looking for you if you stop now. She was right. I released my teeth from his shoulder and licked the blood that dripped down towards his chest and over his Mother of Guadalupe ink. I fixed his shirt and knelt to kiss his lips as he fell slack on the sofa, like he partied too hard. He'd lay there in a deep, comfortable slumber until late the next day. I used the leopard throw to wipe my leg and then covered him with the faux fur. Vero and I stumbled out into the pre-dawn blue glow of the early morning, drunk off the divine meal, floating, drifting, in an absolute state of euphoria. I thought you were gonna kill his ass. You need to stop being so fucking picky and just eat a little here and there. You don't have to drain all the hot guys in Massachusetts, you know. Shut the fuck up, I laughed, lighting my Newport. He's from Rhode Island. We walked the 5 blocks home, arm in arm, as fast as we could to beat the sun, and just as I opened the heavy door to our building, I looked down to see I was barefoot. Fuck. I lost my shoes at the Afties. Oh, maybe you left them in the red room, and that guy will come back to find you like some hood Cinderella. We laughed, but I went to bed that morning secretly wishing he would. Maybe the routine was getting old. How many years could I spend running than chasing? Maybe even at 22 I was getting tired. I was hard on the exterior because I had to be, but what if I was really just a giant sucker? A sucker for lust, love, blood, simplicity? A sucker.
Don't get me wrong, I love the classic stories on the podcast, but I have to say, it is really refreshing to have a contemporary authorial voice. This felt much more relevant to the female experiences of today, and I also really love a modern vampire story. I was a Twilight teen, and this one felt fresh, particularly edgy and layered. I'm just going to make sure to say a big thank you to our guest authors and of course to V. Castro for her editor's note and incredible narration throughout the episode. Also, these are just 2 examples of the stories in Latin American shared stories. There are so many bright and brilliant voices to be heard in this book. You can learn more about the authors and their stories on Thursday in our live and spooky bonus episode. We'll also be revealing a listener-exclusive discount code to get 30% off the book on our website if you give that a listen. Until then, stay spooky.